Congratulations, Srijan.
Thank you.
Young Alumni Achievers Award.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm glad to be called young.
You are young.
Thank you, yeah.
So the amount of achievements that you've had in such a short period of time, and it wasn't long back that you graduated. It's been fairly recent, right?
Yes.
So it's really exceptional.
Thank you for this honor. I really am grateful to IIM for bestowing this wonderful honor, and I think it means a lot because it comes from the institution which has given me so much more. I mean, this is just one award which matters a lot to me, but there's such a long list of things I should be grateful to IIM, and it's just fantastic. It's just homecoming to me. It's like I have always been my family, and it's fantastic to be back here, and thank you for all this.
I'm glad you could come, and I know that you've been coming. We've had chats earlier before.
Yes.
So always happy to have you back. But one of the things that that people don't usually have on their mind when they come to IIMA as students is public service as a goal, right? So was that something that materialized when you were here, or how did it come about?
Well, I think it's something which is a continuous process in life. So when I came here, I had that insect in your mind. So I had that thing that there should be something which should be done, which is beyond what you would ordinarily associate with an MBA course. And I always believed, and I still believe, that IIM is not necessarily a standard business administration setup. It's a leadership place. It's a place where leaders are supposed to be built, and leaders go in a variety of spaces to create positive impact. And at no point do I believe that anyone who's serving in corporate and working in corporate is not doing public service. Everybody is doing public service in their own spheres. It's what's here, and not just your LinkedIn job post, which determines how much good you can do for the country, the society, the people, the world. I think everybody is doing that. IIM Ahmedabad injects you with the confidence to say boldly that I may stand apart, I may not do the usual, or even if I go the usual path, I will do unusual things fearlessly. And that's what IIM Ahmedabad gives you. It gives you the professors, and I remember my own professors, and many of them actually, who would encourage you to think beyond the ordinary, beyond the beaten down path. And I think they would give you those pathways. And the third thing IIM, I think, stresses very beautifully, which helps in public service, is integrity. A lot of times we don't associate, or at least not highlight that part. But the ethical standards of IIM, the integrity standards of IIM are unparalleled. And I think they serve its students, its alumni through their life, wherever they go. So I think this combination of IIM Ahmedabad giving a young student the confidence to do things. And when I was on campus, and not just me, many others, we did things which we never thought we could do as students. Fantastic things, unimaginable things, from a nukkad play outside on a social issue just outside the main gate, the old campus main gate, to working with the Blind People Association right across the road, to hosting the first social entrepreneurship conclave probably in India, which is called Pratyarpan. All that we did, and many much more. We worked with the Harvard team on social impact projects. All of these things give you the confidence that there is a place, there's a path which is not well defined, not well lit, but you have the confidence to do something. It gives you that exposure while you are a student. So I think that helps a lot. So anyone who comes with that oddball in their mind can shape that oddball into a giant project and even a lifelong pursuit. So that's what IIM did. And of course, you've got more questions. You'll come down to Dr. Kalam. So that also
was my next question, of course, because when you were here on campus, of course, you got involved with a lot of social and developmental activities, and that was also around the time when Dr. Kalam was taking the GRIT course, right? Globally Resurgent India through Innovative Transformation. And that was a transformative course for me, of course. But was that something that impacted you in a way in which it sort of pushed you or nudged you in the direction of finally taking that jump?
Which year did you do GRIT? What year was it for you?
That was 9-10.
9-10. So I was in 8-9. So that was when I was 8-9 would be my second year. And that was the first edition.
Yeah.
So I was the students president, general secretary SAC, and I was also the oddball, the biggest oddball in the campus back then. And so I was coordinating that course, and that was the first edition of the course. So everything had to be set in place. And of course, Dr. Kalam had just, he retired as the president in 2007. So it was his also his first year as a professor at IIM Ahmedabad. So he was still building up the course. But I think what Dr. Kalam, I think I must credit IIM for making that meeting happen. Otherwise, I was a person like you or many others who would have seen him on television when we were probably at the end of our school, maybe didn't even understand 30% of what he said as school students. But we saw an inspiration that here's a scientist, the best scientist which we know of in India, who is now the president of India. And so I think for a generation, like us and maybe even the ones younger than us, he is not just iconic, but he is a rock star. And he still remains to be that way. You ask who's the best teacher or who's the best scientist in India today, also children in school will tell you Dr. Kalam. They will tell you that. So, but that was all a television thing. IIM Ahmedabad gives you the opportunity, the platform where you can actually meet him. And I was lucky enough to be coordinating that course, so meeting him much more. And he, the kind of person he was very respectful, and held youngsters in great high regard. He said, ignited mind of the youth is the most powerful resource on the earth. And he believed in it. So he gave us all an opportunity to be heard. And some of us in our batch did remarkable, project ideas came out. I'm sure in your case also, some of them came out. He was there to connect you with the right, people that you may want to execute it that way. So I think that long spell of about 4 months, which I had as a student of his, shaped. So the odd ball was in the mind, but where that ball would go, which pins this ball will hit, was determined in that course. So that grit course is, to me, a life-changing event. It gave you so there was a dream, but it gave the path to the dream. So that's how it happened, and a lot of it is to do with serendipity as well. I remember, I was there's a medal, KVS gold medal, the best all-rounder student. So after the graduation was over, I was supposed to be placed in BCG, Boston Consulting Group. And so I went to meet him, but I could only meet him because I was a former student. So I said, sir, I am your former student and you might remember me. I would like to meet you. I went to Delhi, I showed him the medal. And then he gave me perhaps the best lesson a teacher can give, and that was done in a minute. And this was after his course was over. And he said, okay, you've got a gold medal, which means that you're good. You've got a gold medal. You have to be good. You've got good grades, which means you've got good education. And IIM Ahmedabad is a great brand, so you've been lucky to be a part of it. So now tell me, as a person who's just got out of education, you've got all this degree, how will you use all this to change the world? But that's what education is supposed to do, change the world. Leave the world in a better place than the one which we came in. So he asked me that, and he asked me to write it down. I think that 5 minutes of writing that down in front of him, that mini essay, is an enlightening eye-opener question and an answer to that I'm yet figuring out. I've not exactly figured out answer. Maybe I'll never do that, but at least I'm trying to move towards where light lies. So we're trying to do that. But it was, I think, and if I was not a part of IIM, I don't think this would have happened. And so that's the biggest gratitude I can have for IIM. Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at that as, one of those experiences which people don't really connect with as much, as in they really want to be in that position, in those shoes, and want to experience that, but they don't really feel as if that's attainable in a way, right? For a lot of other people, right? But you were there, and you had that interaction with him, and you were presented with that opportunity, and you took it up, right? So that says a lot about you. But also, what was it like really working as the advisor to him and as the OSD to him?
Well, it was if you start working with it was like becoming Robin in Batman, right? So if you start working with a superhero figure in your mind,
But you don't
that's
mind
what
doing that with a person like that.
no, of course you don't. You don't. You love it. I'm sure Robin
Yeah.
loves being around Batman.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like working with your superhero and a childhood dream. Of course, there are challenges. He was a multidimensional person. He was interested in medicine and space and nuclear sciences and quantum physics and name a thing, engineering, environment, space-based solar power, and so on. So every day you would meet three or four different challenges, but each one of them is a world-changing or potentially world-changing idea. You only meet good people because only good people will approach him. People who have some sound idea or great intentions would come and approach him. So the automatic filter was applied because you were only meeting these kind of people and learning from them their own great ideas. I think Dr. Kalam, more than just a scientific figure or a leader of the nation, he was also a man of great happiness. One thing he taught me is that happiness is often a matter of choice, and you don't need to be successful to be happy. You need to be happy to be successful. And you've been a student, you'll know that how much of smile was loaded in him. It doesn't matter what situation is. You can always deal it with calmness, patience, compassion, kindness, and smiles. So not just a missile man, I think he was a smile man. And that's something which I think there's a lot to learn from him. Traveled across the world with him, and again, I saw things and I observed things and I studied and worked with things which I think for the bulk of my childhood or even my engineering days was something which I would just imagine and dream, from neutrino particles, space things, things which are potentially going to other planets and so on. So that, I think the worldview becomes bigger. At the same time, because he was a man of great observation, your microscopic view also expands. So he had the compassion to look at the last mile problem, a person who's living in a village, what problems is he facing? The first thing he actually gave me was not to go to some big facility. When I started working with him, he said, for 3 months I will send you across India. And I thought I'll go to some hi-fi labs and all. But he said, I'll send you to villages. So I went across India in different villages, and he said, you have to study this person about this and that person about this, and how are they changing the society in their micro ecosystems. Some of those were actually quite big. Nanaji Deshmukh was one of them, the Bharat Ratna. Before he got Bharat Ratna, just before he passed away, I think a week before he passed away, I met him, Nanaji, and I have that photograph. And it's just, Nanaji he lost his vision towards the end of his life, his eyesight. But his imaginary vision, the vision of his imagination was so resplendent, was so vivid. He said, you saw that road, and then left hand side there is that kuan, and then there is this water conservation thing 100 meters to the right. He took me in his mind, lying on a bed, doesn't have an eyesight, but he could, in his vision of imagination, take me through all of those hundreds of villages where he had worked. And then you learn, this is how you love your work. This is what happens when you love your work. It exists in your mind. And so I met such remarkable people. Nanaji is one of them, and many others. I think working with Dr. Kalam gives you that opportunity to learn not just from him, but the entire ecosystem which is built around him. And that ecosystem survives even today. So a lot of things which we do they still surprise me. People's zeal, people's enthusiasm, their positivity still surprises me. And that all happens because you're part of that ecosystem which Dr. Kalam built.
And reviving the village ecosystem and the village environment was one of the primary focus areas for Dr. Kalam, of course. And he talked about it. He created a very catchy acronym for it called PURA, right? Providing urban amenities in rural areas. And that, of course, went on to affect a lot of these, probably hundreds and thousands of villages, right, across the country. And you also had a co-authored book on that, right? Target 3 billion, about that, right? So could you share a little bit more about what did it actually do in the ground in terms of the impact that it had? So of course we know what the project was about, but if you can just explain in your own words what it was about and how did it bring about that transformation, and what are the features of it that are enduring and continue?
Okay, so let me just give you a 2-minute rapid course on Pura. See, Pura stands, as you said, providing urban amenities in rural areas, which means that things and facilities and services which we think are readily available in urban areas should also be available in rural areas. But at the same time, they should not destroy the sustainability, happiness and peace which you associate with a village life or a rural living. So that is something which Pura stood for. It was a cluster development program, which meant that you cluster certain villages to create a critical population mass, and then you create a critical economic activity, and you build around that crucial factor. So there's a population about 10,000 to 50,000. There are 2 or 3 crucial economic activities. You build social assets around it. So you had 4 levels of connectivity: physical, which is essentially roads, buildings; you had electronic, which mobiles, internet, and so on; knowledge, which meant customized knowledge for what people need in their language; and that all should lead to economic connectivity where people create income. So that's Pura for you. Now, of course, when I started, maybe 10 years ago, when we wrote the book actually in 2012, Target 3 Billion, that was my first book, and he told me, why don't you co-author a book with me? So what a fantastic idea. So I said, you really want to write it together? He said, yeah, we'll write it, we'll be co-authors. So we wrote it together. And back then, and if I compare now, about 12 years later, India has changed significantly. Now if I go to villages, you find wide roads. You find advertisements after advertisements of all the telcos, because a huge consumer base is there. You find people on apps. People are well aware of the news. There are customized apps which are available in local communities. And there is a sense of economic benefits which are being reaped at the grassroots level. Today, you don't see really those many chulas, and I'll give you an example. I saw this happen while I was in Gujarat. I was working with the government here, and how that transformed. One little thing transformed everything, right? So you see these in many homes. You had a shelf which was like a mandir, and it was usually in the kitchen or near the kitchen, and you would see the wall all around the statue of the god or the portrait had that carbon deposit, that soot. And the women would keep cleaning it because it's God's place, right? But it would not perfectly clean ever. Now with most of the houses have gas. You don't see dirty walls anymore. You don't see those soot-covered walls anymore. So India has transformed from its base. A lot has to be done, but a lot has been achieved. Now, Pura has of course become Rurban now. So Government of India is still following the mission. It's called Rurban now. Many private people, many NGOs, many universities, many groups have set up their own Pura development programs. Some of them are small, some of them are as big as 1,000 villages, which is in Chitrakoot. There's one in Varna, which is about 600 villages. There's one in Pravaranagar, which is about 500 odd villages, and so on. Some are smaller, 5 villages, 10 villages. So that's something which has, either in the name of Pura or as an idea of Pura, has transformed a lot of villages and has also become an iconic development, sort of a showpiece for others to emulate. So Chitrakoot, for instance, Chitrakoot is in UP, MP. The district is called Satna in MP and Chitrakoot in UP, and it's sort of split between those two states. Has become so iconic. So many people come there just to see what they could replicate in their villages. So I think that sort of a honeycomb approach has worked quite well. It has cross-pollinated ideas. And now with Rurban coming, and you see all what is happening at the grassroots level in rural areas, it's very heartening to see that all of this was imagined by Dr. Kalam and envisaged and shown a clear path in 1999 actually, with the book 2020 and the TIFAC committee. And he imagined that this you could do. You could bring this, you can bring mobile phones to villages. Who would have thought in 1999 that there will be mobile phones in villages? Today, every village, everyone has a mobile phone. Those who can't read also know how to dial. They know how to, at least dial those numbers by, left, right, the button positions. They may not recognize the numbers, and I know such people. So India is, so it's very heartening to see that a man's vision, his idea, and his hope transpired into the right technology, and so on and so forth. And he did a lot for that, and I'm sure in the coming years more great things will happen. I'm very optimistic about India in general. So.
And you're of course taking forward his vision and his legacy in many ways. As the co-founder and CEO of the Abdul Kalam Centre. So could you share a little bit more about what are those initiatives that you have in place right now? Something a little bit about what you are planning to do with the centre?
See, the idea of Kalam Foundation, or which is called, brand name is Kalam Centre, that's more popular. The foundation idea was in 2012. I told Dr. Kalam that, said, you talk about building, how individuals need to create institutions, but your ideas are unique, and they are probably 5 or 10 years ahead in time. So how do you create your own ideas into an institution? And that is how we started Kalam Foundation. We co-founded that. Of course, nothing was needed till he was alive, till 2015. And then suddenly he passed away on 27 July 2015 in IIM Shillong. And that is when we thought that, this team was there, was built, but we didn't have to do much because he was the institution in himself. He's a walking institution. So that's when we said, okay, we're going to take some missions of his and try to, fulfill them, his unfulfilled dreams of the dream man, So what do we do? So we started that project, we restarted that project, let's put it that way, in 2015. And then since then it has grown. It's the world's largest social media based NGO. So if you compare with any NGO in the world, it has got more followers in social media, which do work, which can be asked for doing any volunteering work across the world. It is a unique setup because it is not a central. Dr. Kalam insisted that any institution which is built around a centralized power tends to become weak because it is based on a single pillar. And if the pillars keep changing, pillars are people. So you should have a model which is self-actuated, which means that spontaneously people should be able to do something without having too much of coordination, a bureaucratic coordination with the central body. And it should be something which is self-driven. So people should find their own reasons to do that, own causes to do it, as long it fits in a broader spectrum. So Kalam Centre is not just, if you go on social media or you search anywhere, it's not just one centralized body sitting out of Delhi. There are hundreds and hundreds of Kalam Centres across institutions. Individuals are running it. There are youngsters who have just formed a team and running it. In Gujarat, we have got so many of them. And they all coordinate with us, but it's not that they rely on us in any way. So that is the kind of democratic model of social impact which we experimented, and it has got its own great results. There are some challenges which are there as well, as you would imagine, but it ensures that everybody feels that they are leading their own change. So that is what Kalam Centre has propagated. Now in the course of time, it has opened several libraries, hundreds of them actually. It has created a school mentorship program. It has created India's most coveted, most respected Innovation in Governance Summit, which is called Kalam Innovation in Governance Awards and Summit, which happens annually in Delhi, where the who's who, the bureaucrats, technocrats of India, we are able to get them together and share and exchange ideas of what they could learn from each other, which is quite tough to, to say that, you can learn from someone else as well. So that is something which we have achieved. And of course, and you've got, I'm sure, we can go into each of these details with each question. But over time, I think Kalam Centre has got into two major verticals. One is technology for grassroots, which would usually go through governance route. And the other, because I think Dr. Kalam spent his 60 years of his professional life, he was with the government. And every 1 decade, he would have innovated something completely new. So innovation in governance is one of our focus areas. And the other is education. So we work extensively on education. We work with hundreds of schools, thousands of schools actually, and hundreds of thousands of children, children who otherwise would have been often left behind. In fact, to me, one of the most prized projects of Kalam Centre is what you would not even find on our website, perhaps, or even one short corner it would be there, because it may not yield those numbers, but it's very important. And that project is running mentorship centers at children observatories. Children observatories, for those of you who may not know, are places where children who have committed, it's the technical term is not crime, but children who have done something which amounts to a juvenile delinquency issue, which is legally it's called that, but essentially in conventional language it means children who have committed something unlawful. They are kept because they are younger, so they can't be sent to the standard jails, so they are kept in children observatories. It's confined existence. But we work with them. In fact, maybe one or two we would have spared, but nearly all of them in Gujarat alone, we would have opened Kalam libraries. And the idea is to bring them back. See, it's very, and I'm saying this because I know there are bigger projects which you might want to talk about. But I think emotionally is very important. Imagine a child who's 13 years old, who most of them do not have a father. Many of them do not have both. So they're parentless childs. And in many cases, their father is stepfather. So and there are cases where they've been abandoned by their parents because the mother wanted to remarry. That has also happened. And everyone, nearly 99%, go through the same cycle in life. Abandoned, who do you go to? Someone who makes you do some crime. Someone who makes you do drug peddling. And what do? As a child, you're 12 years old. And then you get caught and you're set here. Now, when you get out of this, and I ask them, okay, you're going to get out in 3 months or 6 months. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. Who's going to come to receive you? Nobody. Nobody to receive them. 12-year-old child gets out of this horrifying experience. First he gets into the family issue, then gets into a criminal issue, then gets punished or corrected. But then there's nothing to do beyond that correction center. What's remaining in him? What do they go back into the same system? There's nothing left. And then and we as a society often sort of see them as condemned. We see that these are criminals in making. That's what we think. I've been told that this is what these people are. Why do you work with them? They are future criminals. But they're not. They're children. And if you don't recover them there, you ensure that they will become people who you would not want them to become when they grow up. So I think and it's a small project in terms of volume, in terms of the people investment we have made or the books we have sent. But I wish that we could create much more of this. We have to create this ecosystem. So because we are interviewing and it just came to my mind, I thought I should highlight this. And so I think to me that is to me the closest project to my heart, which we have done from Kalam Centre.
And you mentioned education, of course. That is again a big theme, right? Of course, hundreds of libraries have been opened, but something that's particularly interesting to me, I think, was the Homi Labs, right? And you founded that, and that focuses a lot on the future aspects, a study of the future, right? And that's a fairly unusual sort of a topic to take up as a study for the school or college going kids. And how do you structure the content of that? What's the reach of that? What are the people who are actually engaged with you on that, and what kind of activities do you take up as part of this?
See, I think Homi Lab starts with Kalam Library itself, as you rightly pointed out. We operate 495, we have opened 495 free libraries across India. They're all free. And they are in the remotest places of India. Even in Ahmedabad, I think we have one in Leelapur village, which is not far from here. Now, these libraries, what we used to teach in them was things which would help you in terms of your future. And then there's a book called Reignited, which Dr. Kalam and we co-authored in 2015, which also focused on exactly this topic. Because when we were working, Dr. Kalam and we set up a big research, and some of IIMA Ahmedabad students were involved in them. We used to run an internship program on what needs to be done for education. to make it, see, education has not changed for hundreds of years. In 1900, if you go, cars, you would have seen a photograph of a car. You would have seen the Wright brothers aircraft. Imagine from there to an Airbus 380. Imagine from that crickety car to a Ferrari. Imagine computers didn't exist back then at all. Calculators didn't exist. Abacus se kaam karte the. You didn't have a space program. You didn't know what atoms were. You didn't know what viruses were. But the school system in 1900, the classroom and the way it is taught is exactly the same as it is today. Okay, maybe the blackboard has become a whiteboard, or maybe if you're in an expensive school, maybe a smart board. But the system has not changed. The system is same. There is a teacher, great. Now you all will have to become like the teacher. And any deviance from the standard guideline is punishable. You have to become the topper of averages. So you average out your marks. Whoever gets the maximum marks is the best. Is that how life is? That's not how the greatest musicians, the greatest scientists, the greatest mathematicians were bred and born. Life is about excelling, and life is about being, it's like hitting a moving target. When you hit a moving target, fast moving target, and the target moves really fast now in these days, you don't aim at the target. You aim at where the target would be. When your bullet or your projectile reaches the target, you have to match these both, right? So education mein ulta hai. Because what you're doing is different. You're saying that here's a moving target. Now I will give you a syllabus based on what the target was last year, and now you hit it, right? And then the child gets frustrated, and that's why children do not like school. There's no excitement. For 90% children don't want to wake up and go to school. They cry. There's no fun in school left, and it's hard for schools to do it. It's not the problem of schools, it's the problem of the syllabus also. If the syllabus is that way, the whole thing has to be transformed. Now, I can't transform everything, nobody can do it, but we can do a little micro transformations. So one of the things which Dr. Kalam and I, we thought we'll focus on is building a complete, we did it as a book, building a book, and back then the technology was much lower, 2015, and the world has changed a lot. We said a book is good. And we built the world's first book on future readiness in children. It's called Reignited. I wrote a sequel to it called Reignited 2. When COVID hit, that's when Homey Lab comes in, because then there's a lot of scope for digital learning, and now suddenly India, especially, has become very digital literate in terms of education space. People know how to use it. People have devices, they have internet, and so on. So we are so what do you have? You have a bunch of children who are now know how to operate mobile phones, who either have their own phones or their parents' phones. The parents are willing to give the phone to children to study. You have this ready. So you have all the ingredients ready. What has to be the recipe in it? What you can do with this? Beautiful things you can do. Now you can reach masses with the best quality content which aims at the moving target in the future. And that's what Homey Lab is. So we teach children on not what has happened, but what will happen. So you can imagine history mein hum padhte the ki 1857 when the first war of independence happened and Rani of Jhansi did this and so on and so forth. Now we are going the other way around. In 2057, man and humans have landed and settled on Mars. Now imagine that, and let's see how this happened and how it would look like. So we are building world-class content at astonishingly near zero prices. We are offering content to children and anybody who thinks like a child, which I hope everybody does, and simulators. So we built the world's first simulator on Space Center. So you can be an astronaut. If you want to be a child and you want to be an astronaut, what did we do? We used to read books. But imagine children today are playing Grand Theft Auto, which is a game of murdering people. They're playing Assassin's Creed, which means Assassin's Creed. It means assassinator, somebody who assassinates. So children know how to, they're playing these brilliantly looking CGI affected games, and they are near real life experiences, but there's nothing of that quality when you want to teach a child how to be an astronaut. So we build that. It's equal quality. A huge investment. And we built the world's first Mars station. So you remember that movie Martian? Similar to that. You can build the entire Mars station. You do all the activities which would be needed on Mars. And it's the same quality. So we are building that simulators, those high level simulators for children. And because of today's digital era, you can propagate it I think we are able to reach out to children at a prices of 6-7 rupees a day. So, and all of this. So that's the kind of thing, and we want to bring it even further down. We want to bring it down to 1 rupee a day, and which we will. We are working on a new project, and hopefully we'll cut down the cost to about 1.5 rupees a day. That will be a master. And language, you use your language. You want Gujarati, I'll give you Gujarati. You learn. Don't worry about language. Far too long we are having this conversation in English, but we don't need to be enslaved by a language. I think our vernacular, local, traditional, cultural language are also quite rich. So any language you want, we'll do it. And the idea is to get eventually by 2024, we want to get it to 1 rupee a day. So that's it.
That's not far off. That's just 1 year.
Oh no, yeah. That's our future. So see, anyway, but that's how cycle happens, right? Once you start a project, it's slightly expensive. So we started off with, and we've been going down.
No, but I'm struck by the timeline. Are you saying by next year it'll be?
Oh yeah, next year.
So
next year by March or April, we should be able to offer in the range of between 1 to 2 rupees a day.
Wow.
So that's our cost, which we will. So that's nothing, and I think every child can do it then, and you will do it in your own language. You don't need to learn English to do that. Learn in Gujarati. I'm fine with that. I'll put a Gujarati guy. Everything is Gujarati, because it's all in house. So our investment was because of this only. I could get it done from somewhere, but we built our own team to do that, for precisely this reason, that it has to be language independent. It has to be Indianized in that context. It has to be an Indian context. I don't want to teach NASA. You don't need to carry NASA here. They can carry ISRO here, because ISRO will go there. In 10 years, ISRO will go there. 15 years, ISRO will go there. 20 years, we'll be the space leaders. So why not? That's the future. So let them target this. Right? And we build characters like Dr. Kalam. They will teach you. So remember how many people, you were a student of Dr. Kalam, you were lucky. How many people will tell you, you're so lucky you got to learn from Dr. Kalam, I could not. Right? People say that. So we've built an entire digital avatar of Dr. Kalam, which will teach you anything you want. So you learn from him, and in the way you want to learn, whether it's on your phone, whether it's in a movie, like a CGI, everything will be done.
I don't think many people know about that.
It is happening, so we are still sort of...
I didn't know. I mean, I would love to see that.
Yeah. We're 2024, we'll have it ready. I can show you, in fact, once this is over, we have something already. You'll see the quality of it. So it looks real life. In fact, his house also, we sort of have digitized that. So it looks similar to the house. So that's Rajaji Marg is also remains that way. I think there's tremendous power in bringing the best of management, which is ideation and leadership, with the best of technology, which is right there. You've got some amazing technological tools today, and the right intent. If you're able to bring these three things together, there'll be ample resources. There's never dearth of resources to enable you to do this. But you need to bring these three things together: intent, leadership / management, and technology. That's what we're doing. Often we don't do that. In social impact space especially, we lack in this. Sometimes we have the right intent, we have the right leadership, but we don't bring in technology, so we never are scalable. Sometimes we have the technology and the intent, but we don't know how to shape it as an idea, so there's no leadership to it, and so on. So I think bringing those three things together becomes important.
And also, I think through the Kalam Bharat fellowships, I think you're impacting close to around 200,000 kids now.
No, that was when I think that's old news. So we now have recruited 5,000 fellows this year. It was 400, 500, 600 something like last year. This year we have massively scaled because we have expanded across states. This year we'll have 5,000 fellows across India. They'll be teachers essentially, who would be going out to remote schools which are Ekal Vidyalay, who are single classroom, single teacher, schools which are in remote areas, mostly in South India. And they would be taking a special curriculum which would include futurism, which would include cleanliness, which would include child rights, child abuse and child rights, how to tackle that. It's a huge problem. And which would include things on entrepreneurship and happiness. And this entire thing would be taught in those schools which don't even have a digital sort of a setup. They don't have electricity, many of them, or at least not consistent power. So they are going out, and these 5,000 teachers, which are called fellows, would go out. And this time, I think, so far, we have hundreds of thousands, about 300,000 we would have covered, children beneficiaries. This time, we hope to hit more than 1 million. So that's this year's target, 2023's target is 1 million. I think with 5,000 teachers, we should be able to do that. We already recruited about 4,000 something. Another 1,000 are about to be recruited. The process is going on from our Hyderabad office, and I hope this becomes. I think there's tremendous power in, and idea from this is actually from Prayas.
Oh, is it?
That's what Prayas is, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
You get these young students in good schools like IIMA Ahmedabad, who could then mentor children who are at the grassroots, and create those spaces. And that initially Prayas used to go there. We had, I don't know, you were not there, but Prayas used to be outside the campus. I don't know where it is now. Then it came inside
the campus.
So it happened during my time. I was
so we have the Smile thing, which is right under the flyover. So it's
Smile came later. Smile came later. Smile came later. But this is similar to Smile. You don't even need to do that. So in Prayas, I used to tell them that why don't we go to government schools? There is space, there is a blackboard, there is a classroom, we can do that. But then the problem was that, the stress of 2 years of education here is so much that it's hard to go. But people used to go there. Some of them, initially, we used to go to their classrooms. So that's what we're doing. We're saying, yeah, let's take these young graduates in their final year. They should go and teach, and we train them. So it's a course on leadership and communication we provide, and then they go out and then they teach children. And I think it's great if you teach a child, if you can teach a class, you can talk to anyone, any media channel you can handle, if you can handle a classroom of children. Because they will give you immediate feedback. They are ruthless. If they don't like you, they'll start talking to each other. Right? And you can't do anything about it. You can try to keep them shut, but they're off. So they are very ruthless that way. Very honest, very ruthless. If you can communicate with them, you can communicate in any board meeting. So I think it's a great learning course.
It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I guess children.
That should be essential board meeting.
I think all corporates should do a training. All our companies should do a training on first make them a teacher. Fun day. Go and teach in a government school. Because then you have to also, you also learn that you have to come down to the level of the audience and not use your, not assume that everybody understands what you say.
So of course you've done a lot of stuff, and all of this is very challenging, right? And the scale that you're talking about is, mind-boggling. What was some of the, and I'm sure the path was littered with challenges all throughout, but what challenges did you think were some of the most formidable ones?
See, I worked in the government. I was a government employee in that way. I worked outside the government with the government as well. So now I'm working outside the government, but a lot of our projects, for example, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we are working extensively on them. We are operating the world's largest quiz as we speak. It's got 12 lakh participants. It's the world's largest quiz. The prize money is 55 lakh rupees cash, 10 lakh rupees for the winners, the two, 10 each. And we were able to create, places which you've not heard of. I mean, I didn't know this district existed, So there were so many districts which I didn't know exist, and we got participants from 734 districts out of 780 districts in India. Almost every single district participated, right? So almost every single, from northeast, this, that, and we were able to reach out to them. And so we are working with the government to do that, with two ministries, Ministry of Petroleum and Ministry of Culture. Ministry of Petroleum via Indian Oil is the one who's sponsoring this entire project. And today, on 25th we have the regional finals in Kolkata, and the national finals will be next month, where the final award will be given. Now, you can do all that only when you work closely with the government. The government is a very powerful body, and whose sole job is public service. That's their job. That's their mandate for which they get taxation money. Governments tend to be structured so much that they become slow. What you see is inaction is actually that structure. But once the thing shoots out of the structure cage, which is not exactly a cage, it's more like an incubation space, because you have to ensure those checks and balances, it's really fast. I think the biggest learning is now outside the government, if you can work with the government on innovation. That's what Kalam Centre does with the government. Many projects we have, and we can talk many of them. This will take more time when we have. It goes really fast. There's no way on earth you could have a quiz where more than 1 million people participate across nearly all districts of India. There's nothing which exists. It's only the machinery of the government which can help it happen. So there are certain strengths to it. There are a lot of challenges in government, which I've already told you, which the whole world is aware of. But the government has strengths. And ऐसा नहीं है कि government का intent नहीं होता. किसी के भी हो, it doesn't matter which political party is there. The government's intent is more or less correct. Right? There will be one odd story you will hear in media, something going wrong, but that doesn't mean the government doesn't work. The machinery doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you'll not have the roads. Nothing will work. If that machinery is not working, there will be no electricity. Nothing can happen. So it works. You are in a very stable government environment in this country. You're lucky to do that. Many countries do not have it. When you go outside the government, you have mobility. You have flexibility. You can take risks. For example, the Homi Lab project. You can take risks. It's a perfectly invested company, right? Homi Lab is that way. And you have the ability to take any risk. I don't have to go and keep asking 50 people. But to scale it, you need still the government. So I think the beautiful model which we can evolve out of all this is that how you can make government and non-government work together. That's the PPP sort of a model. I think that's a hugely, it's something which is untapped in India and anywhere in the world, but it has a lot of potential. And there'll be challenges. When you're in the government, there's challenges of permissions. When you're outside the government, there are challenges of resources. But I tell you, there is one challenge if you can solve, everything else gets sorted, and that is people. There's no bigger challenge and opportunity than human beings. You know why IIM Ahmedabad is so great? Is because it has the best people holding it together. And I'm not just talking about the professors. I'm talking about the staff. And I'm not just talking about the senior staff. I'm talking about the last guy. It's remarkable to see that the person who comes and cleans the dormitories comes at exactly the same time and does exactly the same work. You don't have to complain, check. There's nothing, no discrepancy. There's a hidden hand, invisible. But it makes the system operate. It's people. Nothing. It's not about the buildings. It's not maybe a lot legacy, but ultimately it's about people. And people are, I think most humans have talent. Talent is an oversold commodity. Talent can be built. You can go to Coursera, you can go to internet, you can learn new skills. Anyways, what you know will become obsolete in 1 year, so you need to keep learning. But the idea and the intent to be a continuous learner is an attitude issue. So I would any day, I hire for attitude. Baki to bana denge, no problem. I'll train them, I'll make them sit and learn. That's, I think, and this is something which everybody will resonate, whether you will interview people from the corporate side as well, and they will resonate exactly the same. Now the way I from a social enterprise angle, the way I would build from attitude to talent would be a different path. It has to be a motivation, incentive to make a change. The way a corporate would do it may be a different challenge. It'll be growth, it'll be financial growth and so on, whatever. But you start with that. You always start. And that's, to me, the biggest challenge. And I'm seeing that an emerging challenge in the global ecosystem of workforce, and especially the young people. There's a lack of patience in people. Youngsters have succumbed to the culture of instant gratification everywhere. You want food at 12 in the night, whatever ice cream you want, you'll get it. Exactly the same flavor, delivered in 30 minutes. So there's no patience, there's no waiting, and that goes for everything. Everything you want is just one click away. And that's not a great culture. It's something which distorts, and we seek, youngsters today seek too much of physical comfort. It's not about the emotional comfort, it's not about the mental peace you want. You want too much of comfortable zone. And that, I think that becomes a challenge for someone, especially operating like us. We are working in a difficult space. It's hard to find people who would be okay to go out in the sun in May when there's no electricity, and to keep them motivated is a challenge. But it's fun. You find the best people even now. I learn from the youngsters who we hire. They're 20 years something, but I still learn from them. There's much to learn. There's some things they learn from me, but then I also learn from them. So that's the process.
And you've you've had a sort of a very varied, sort of stakeholder groups that you've worked with, right? You've worked with the government, yourself being in the government, you've worked very intimately with the social sector, you've collaborated with the corporates, and you've had the exposure to sort of work with a lot of different kinds of, not only just stakeholder groups, but lots of different kinds of environments, different kinds of systems and ecosystems and stuff. And many of these have been, adjusting to a lot of these things, changing the way you function with all of these things. Of course, there is a difference in the way you function in a particular group versus some other group. And many of these groups and many of these actions and the activities that you did were in a fairly complex environment. So it's like, you've had to navigate through a lot of these, complex environments. And what's your, your philosophy or the go-to strategy or the problem-solving framework or decision-making framework that you use to help you with this, right? So, for example, somebody listening to this interview, or some of the students at IIMA or anybody else wants to walk down the road that you've walked down, or probably do something similar with different kinds of stakeholders, different kinds of environments and groups. But then is daunted by this kind of, whether I'll be able to do this, whether, I have the skill sets to actually navigate so many different kinds of environment, because every, a student is sort of specializing in a different kind of area now. Be it technology, be it, even if you look at it in a much broader sort of a framework, even if you don't go into individual areas of technology, but just say broad area as technology, broad area as management, broad area as medicine, right? So people are sort of, in those silos in a way. But if you want to break those silos and you want to create an impact across these large areas and do what you've done, what are the things that, you would advise these people? What are your go-to strategies, your things that you use for problem solving and decision making and stuff?
Okay, right. So let me just structure this answer in a way that if somebody wants to do this, what is the path and how do you decide things, right, broadly? I think in life, sooner the better, one must know what is your dream. If you don't know your dream, if you don't know what is your aim in life, you're like Alice in Wonderland then. Okay, so everything seems shiny, and every shiny thing seems I should keep it, and then you end up wasting a lot of energy and emotions and time in projects and things which are half complete, and it demoralizes you. And we've all done that. I've also done that. Everybody has done that. But at some stage, sooner the better, you have to decide on an aim in life. And the problem of, you'll always come across like there are two choices which look equally likely. And then let life decide it for you. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. There's no head and tail choice in this. It's equally likely. Just let your gut choose it. The sooner you decide your aim, what your aim and your dream does to your thinking is that it gives you a structure. Whether I'm moving on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, am I moving towards that dream? Is this in that framework? So your first check is that. Just because it appears right to somebody else or somebody else says it's right, it's in their structure, it's their aim. May not be your aim. That's, I think, paramount. It defines you. The second thing is, define your brand. After deciding your aim, define your brand. These are things, 2-3 things which I want to be known for in life. Brands take time to build. It may take you a decade, more than a decade to build, 2-3 decades. It will be a lifelong pursuit. And it will guide you, it will set a boundary to where you can venture and where you cannot, right? So you might want to build a brand of integrity, innovation. You pick your brand, pick more than one brand, that's okay. So your aim and the framework of brand which you want to build is something which will guide you in terms, it will be like a channel where you want yourself to flow. Now, having done that, there will be tactical decisions which you'll have to make on a daily basis. Sometimes there will be interdependencies. So being aware, situational awareness is what you call, especially in the armed forces, if you work, there's something called situational awareness. You have to be aware. What is happening? Where is the environment? Where am I? Where are others? What is happening? And what is the interdependency? That becomes extremely crucial. And so you do these 3 things. Situational awareness is more tactical. It's less strategic. It's more tactical. It helps you in a daily basis. and you move towards that while you move in that channel towards your aim and towards your brand. While you do all that, remember one thing: anything which keeps you inherently unhappy for more than a week is not worth doing. Any person, any task, anything. If it's keeping you unhappy inherently, see, one day extraneous factors may be there. You may be having a bad toothache, so you are having a one bad day. But if you're having it for 7 days, unhappiness, you must actually figure out. And that's where I think daily diaries and daily reflection helps. You can write it down. If you don't want someone to accidentally read it, put it on a Google Drive, set a password to it, which only you know. But reflect yourself. When you start reflecting, you see where you're heading. And in that process, if you find, and to me that's a golden rule, 7 days, if something is keeping me unhappy, I have to get out of it, or I have to change it, or I have to figure out why is it keeping me unhappy and change that part of it. So that is extremely important. Nothing is achieved if you are unhappy. Even if you achieve something, what does it mean? And the last thing I want to pitch in is human beings, because you are targeting this as young students who are here or would be entering here. The goal function of happiness is unique to everyone, and it has got multiple variables. It's a multivariate function. Just because you are professionally successful doesn't mean that you will be happy or you are successful. Professionally you've grown well, it's okay, but that doesn't mean you're successful. Success is when you're happy, when you get a good night's sleep and you're happy to wake up the next morning, because what you're going to do this day is going to be equally exciting. If it's not the case, then there's some problem. So success, or let's say the idea of success, is a multivariate thing. It's not just about professional success, it's about family. I think one thing I see, and because we are in IIM Ahmedabad, I see especially in people who come from well-known brands, is that in the pursuit to be professionally acclaimed on a daily basis, they let go of their personal life, their health, their personal life, the health of those the loved ones. We take them for granted. ये तो है, मम्मी पापा तो है ही, कल कर लेंगे बात, परसों कर लेंगे, we'll do it later. But that's a sure shot way to ensure life remains unhappy. If you want happiness in life, balance it out, and you'll make better decisions. Seek help. If you want to talk to your friends, do it. Ask them. It doesn't make you smaller if you ask for an advice to someone. And definitely, never let go of that inner circle of life of 4-5 people. They will always remain the most important in your life. And if they are the pillars in your life, everything else will build. Because they'll give you inherent strength, they'll give you inner strength, and that's important. So I think that is what's there, and choose your dream. So, for example, what motivates me? If I'm able to bring, something which a person out there wouldn't imagine they can get, and the joy which they get, by seeing it, you put a child, through, say, one of the simulation labs, and the happiness they have, that to me is very, very fulfilling. So that's my dream. That's something which just gives me the kick. So you should know what does that to you, and life will wield itself, and there'll be many decisions you'll make wrong. Many more decisions will be wrong than right. More projects will fail than succeed. The thing is that you didn't ask me what were your greatest failures. Name 100 failures, right? I would not put it on my application for the award, right? But that doesn't mean they don't exist. The problem is we see successful people and we think इसका तो सब success ही होता है. वो book लिखता है तो उसमें भी success stories लिखता है. मैंने ये किया, मैंने वो किया, मैंने that, did this, did that. But the truth is that nobody writes about their failures. Failures are not put on Instagram. Failures are not boosted posts on Facebook. So we think that the world exists devoid of failures. So you may decide everything correct, still will fail, and that's okay.
And it's interesting you say that, because we have a project here going on called CV of failures. I mean, of course, it's there elsewhere as well, but so there's work happening at the institute on something called a CV of failures. So you list down all the failures that you have, but then they are building stones, right? So you use that as stepping stones.
And I tell you, my own failure. in first year when I entered IIM Ahmedabad, I fell sick and I failed. And I had to repeat the first year. And it happened within the first few months. And to come back, I was a failure. I was a repeater. But if that didn't happen, I would not have met Dr. Kalam.
Yes.
So life had a plan. Okay. If that didn't happen, by the time I reached second year, Dr. Kalam would have come in the next year.
Next year.
Right. So now it is shameful to come to the first year knowing that the ones who were sitting with you, and not that you failed on marks, so you were doing pretty well, and then suddenly you're still, you are now, they are your seniors, right? Your own colleagues become your seniors, and it's at some point it gives you a sense of shame. It gives you, you want to hide your face. But then see how life builds on, right? If that didn't happen, I wouldn't be sitting here. If that didn't happen, I wouldn't have had the greatest joy of working with Dr. Kalam for 7 years almost. So what seems to be a failure is actually a correction of the path. You're being stopped from doing something because by doing that you would not do what you were supposed to do. So failure sometimes opens, and I'm telling you from my own example, I'm not even quoting anyone else. I felt very bad when I came back for the first year, the second time. Now people remember, even if you worked with them for 2 months, they still remember, and they would ask you funny questions with good intentions, but the same repeat questions keep happening, and you feel like, kya ho raha hai yaar? What is this happening? Why am I here? I should have got out of this and I would have done something else. And you curse yourself for, why did this happen to me? But then that's what happens. It happens. So that's what patience. Failure is nothing, but it's not even a failure. It's most of the times you don't even know. It's just, and you may never know. It's just a way for life to stop you from doing something which you should not have done, because you were destined to do something different, something which have made you happier. So that's what it is.
So what's next for you?
What's next is, we are working on this Homey Lab. As I told you, in 1 year, I need to bring it to a point where I can offer it to every single child in India in every single major language, 22 languages of India. We're building all of them. The quiz is in 22 languages, by the way, all languages of India, right? And so we want to bring it to every single child in India at the most affordable price, at nearly 1 rupee a day, and make them learn future. I want children to learn and discuss and debate and talk about what is going to happen, then fight and quabble and debate about things which have already happened. History has a place, it has a great place, but it has no place to fight, especially for children. I don't think the contest is necessary there. I think we should debate and discuss and build a future together, and so that's my number one priority going forward. Our Kalam Bharat project, as I told you, this year we will recruit 5,000 teachers, which will reach out to more than 1 million children across the lowest income stratum of our social group. The beneficiaries are brilliant children, but that's how life has turned out. They are economically deprived, and we will ensure that deprivation does not become a hindrance in their dreams and in their careers. So that's number 2 thing which we have to do. We are going to do the innovation and governance work, and of course, as I told you, we are working on the Jigyasa quiz, which is the world's biggest quiz, and we want to beat it next year, our own target. And hopefully, the idea is that if a child from a small village in, say, northeast, we don't know who's going to win eventually, but I tell you that now we are reduced to 64 children remaining from a pool of lakhs, 1 million plus, 64 are remaining. And out of those 64, I think about 20 would be from cities. The remaining are from villages. They're like, because we reached out that way, and we ensured the questions are that way. So we keep asking, what is India Gate? Then who will win? The one who's in Delhi. But if you ask with India Gate, which flower is this, sarson ka phool, then there's equal parity. So you can't ask a Barabanki ka bacha on what is India Gate dedicated to. You can, but then it's not equals. The other guy has seen it. This person has never visited Delhi. He's never gone out of his village, but he knows what is a mustard of flour like. So ask him what is a mustard flour, and ask him this. This is what technology enables you. You can ask different questions to different people based on what they are. So that's how I told you the triad. That's how you meet. So we have done it successfully this year, and you will hear about it by next month, which will become the biggest prize money in a quiz ever. I mean, the other one will be KBC, where I participate extensively. But beyond that, I think on a non-televised, this is the biggest quiz ever. So we want to continue that. I think it's a great experiment that children will get to. And you know who's going to come with them? Even today, we are offering free tickets to everyone who comes. Their mother should come with them. We want the child to come with their mother. And if mother can't come, father can also come. But you want them to come with their parents. So the parents see, my child has got me to Calcutta. When it's happening on 25th Calcutta, and because of my child, I'm doing this. So knowledge has to be rewarded. So next year, children will read even more. You can win this big prize. So we want to do this as a continuous process. So this has become a huge entity for us because I really wanted to make India into a culture where and we have always done that. It is only the British who taught us not to celebrate knowledge. Otherwise, think about this, 6,000 years of civilizational existence, and Indians, we believe 10,000, but even go Western model of 6,000 years, all but the last 300 years, we were the top of economics, we were the top of science, we were the top of spirituality, philosophy, trade, you name it, sanitation, urban planning, infrastructure, we are the top, number one, not even number two, right, number one. So 95% of civilizational existence, India was at the top spot. I want us to go back there, without arrogance, you can be there. And I think my role, as I see it in that quest, is via knowledge, via younger people, via school children, and spreading that we have to build a culture where knowledge is accessible in your language, in your economic zone, in your place, at your doorstep, in your mobile phone, and knowledge is rewarded, is the most rewarded thing in a society. So children should say, I want to be the best quizzer. Just like children say, I want to be rich, so I want to be a cricketer. I want to be a movie star. Why? Because I want to be rich and famous. Why not say that I want to be rich and famous, and the path to me is to learn a lot of things and win quizzes or do this or do that, which is knowledge driven. So it is the same platter, So then you create a society which is marching towards, in a multi-way, is marching towards the goal of being what you call the Vishwaguru, but jo bhi bole, naam hai wo to, but towards the leadership the world deserves from this country.
Well, Srijan, it was a pleasure talking to you, and great we could have this discussion, and I'm sure we'll continue this later on as well. But I'm sure all the stuff that you shared, many interesting perspectives, and a lot of people listening to this would be really inspired by that. And I would wish you all the best for all the initiatives that you mentioned, and I hope we can contribute to that in some way, form or fashion possible. And thank you for being here, and congratulations again.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being this fantastic questions you had. It's always a pleasure to be back here, be with all of you, and I am very grateful to all of you. Thank you.